Tonight, we get to take a deep dive with a new friend of mine, someone who now holds a role that is very near and dear to my heart. I'm proud to welcome onto the Future Forecast podcast my new friend, Sean Mahoney. Sean, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Dennis. Thank you for having me on.
I'm excited to have you on and kind of talk a little bit about your background and really just kind of do a deep dive into your journey and how you got here. So you're here now. You're the host of the Future Forecast debrief every week. How's that working out for you so far?
Oh man. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I'm a big fan of yours and the work that you were
Thank you.
doing. So I feel like I have really, you left some really big shoes to fill.
Thank you.
Naturally, I'm kind of an introvert, so it's a little bit of work to get me to kind of be more engaging and all that. But it's a subject that I love, remote viewing and working with this crew. These are just great guys and gals to work
Yeah,
with. So
it's a lot of
that helps
fun.
bring it out too. But
Yeah, it's tough. It was tough at first, stepping out of that role and stepping into this role because this is, that's a project that I've been a part of for such a long time. And with the crew, we grew so close, that
yeah,
check in every week. And especially, you'll come to see as you go through the ups and downs of life and world events and turmoil. It's such a comfort having that crew to check in with each and every week. Um, Watching you just do what you do and what you bring to the table. Like, first of all, I got to say, like, I can just see it. You're just a nice guy. Like, I think that shines through in what I've seen of you. And you seem very genuine, which is what I like, which is what I think is really important in the type of work that we do here. And I love what you bring to the program in terms of your analysis and your experience. And you're also not you're even keel. You're calm. You keep it mellow, and you don't pipe things up. They don't need to be piped up. I mean, I just think you have a great approach to that, and that's really nice to see. I care a lot about the team, so I'm glad to see you bringing that. I think you enhance the program with what you bring to it.
that means a lot to me, Dennis. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I've watched a lot of work in the remote viewing field over the years, and
Yeah,
yeah, I definitely like. So we recently just had that debrief on the anomalous project,
yeah,
and I was super intimidated about because I just started this role, right?
yeah,
And then to go out there and to kind of present this info to the subscribers, I knew it was going to be kind of emotional, all that, but I did my very best to try not to be
yeah.
alarmist. Remote viewing is not perfect. I mean,
Correct.
we've got a great team, and these guys are, the best at what they do. But we don't know what the future holds. All we can do is
Right.
report on the data that we get, and a lot of
Hmm.
times we don't know until it actually happens that, yeah, we were on.
Right.
So, yeah, doing, just trying to be, genuine is something I try to do in everything I do because I think that matters.
It does. And I found that when you're just transparent and you're who you are, as opposed to maybe playing a role, I think it makes your job a lot easier. You just bring what you have and you keep it as your intuition leads you through that. And the guys take over the rest. They bring the data, and you help bring that out of them, and it keeps everybody moving along nicely. That was an intimidating thing to present, especially so early on as the host.
Yeah,
Now you worked that target too, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, so it's a lot of work doing that analysis.
Yes.
And I work full time. I've got a
Hmm.
family, so I try to do the same. When crypto or sorry, future forecasting group puts out a target, I'm a viewer. I like to get viewing in, and you guys do some
Yep.
of the most interesting targets. So when I can, I try to do a session, even if it's just a quick one through S3. And my intuition was really it really just got me on that one because I was getting ready to get the feedback so that I could get the sessions in and do the analysis. While I was completely blind, my subconscious was just like, Sean, you got to do a session. So I
Yeah.
sat down and I just did a quick one through S3. And I think like an hour later, I had my meeting with the leadership to basically be told, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah.
Here's the data that we got. We're sending you the sessions now. And I was just kind of like, holy crap.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, I had the same experience. I didn't work the target at all. But I just put something up on my channel. I talked about it with Dick last week. I do my own sessions sometimes, just like it's like a world events for my life, right? And just like, what do I need
Yeah.
to know? And I got it. I got the same data, which was
Wow.
really bizarre. I was talking to Dick, and he's just saying how we're all just entrained as the team and stuff. But that freaked me out because I was like, this is probably just noise. And then I'm looking at it like as I was prepping to interview Dick, I'm looking at it going, oh my gosh, no,
Yeah.
this is the anomaly of what the heck's going on here. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a wild ride. So how did you get connected with the group?
Yeah. So, gosh, I lived a very, very normal life. The most of my life, what the Muggles or I wasn't into the psychic or the paranormal spiritual type stuff.
Okay.
I became an engineer and I actually worked for Chrysler as an automotive engineer for about 7 years.
Oh wow.
But I had a really interesting time in my life around 2008 when the economy was taking a nosedive. Chrysler was getting ready to go into bankruptcy. And at that time, so I was married and didn't have kids yet. My wife had left her first career to when we got married and moved up to Michigan, with me where I was working, and she got a job. And then I moved from Detroit to St. Louis for a promotion and a raise. And she had to get a new job again. So two times she's had to, leave
Right.
her job and find a new one so that we could, so for my career. And they were getting ready to close the plants I was working at in St. Louis and move me back to Detroit. And I was just like, I can't do this to my wife again.
Yeah.
So I left Chrysler. And at that time, and it was just so difficult. I thought, I'm young. I got my master's degree. I've got 7 years experience. I shouldn't have a problem getting a new job. Well, it took over 2 years for me to find a new job.
Oh
And during
wow.
that time, I was feeling just absolutely horrible. I didn't
Hmm.
realize when I left, like just how difficult it would be to get a new job. And I avoided situations where you meet new people because, what's one of the first questions you ask is, hey, what do you do? And I can no longer say,
Right.
hey, I'm an engineer, I work at Chrysler. It's just like I was ashamed of where I was at. And so I don't think it's a coincidence I started having health issues.
Hmm.
The our happiness in life, our fulfillment is very much tied to our health.
Right.
And I was under so much stress and I was trying to like work out and run, but I was never turning my mind off. I was never getting out of that state of mind where I was just constantly running over scenarios and stressing. And so um, when I had this downward spiral going on in my life, I was going to the doctor and they were saying, you know, we don't know what's wrong with you. And they wanted to give me antidepressants, even though I wasn't clinical in my depression.
Right.
Um, but I've always had an aversion to medication. I don't even like taking an aspirin for a headache.
Right.
And so um, it was my mom who was on my case to go try a holistic doctor. And so I was like, fine, I'll try anything at this point. And that's the first time I tried acupuncture. And I
Uh-huh.
remember feeling like I was wasting my time. I was sitting on the table. I think I had a needle sticking out of my forehead, one out of my hand, and the other one out of the other hand. And I laid on the table for like 10 minutes and they came in and they took them out and I sat up and I felt something like I felt a shift. I felt lighter. I felt clearer.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to put it into words, but um, I felt a difference and I knew that it wasn't placebo because I was doubting it the whole time. And
Right.
so I remember driving home thinking, what the heck was that? And so it kind of opened up my mind to different things. And I was like, okay, well, I felt better from that. So what else you guys got? I changed my diet and I was able to make some
Sean.
changes in my life where I began to feel better for the first time in a long time. And also around this time, it was my wife who had the idea. She was in a stage hypnosis show in college, and she got hypnotized in the audience and went up and did some goofy stuff. But she said, maybe something like, she said at the end of the show, the hypnotist said, you're going to get the best night of sleep tonight you've ever got. She's like, it worked. Like, I felt amazing that night after, sleeping like, so she's like, maybe something like that can help with the stress you're going through. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'll try that out too.
Sean, I got to
And,
pause you real quick. Can you hear
oh,
me?
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my computer is frozen here all of a sudden. So
Oh, okay.
I don't want to lose this conversation because it's probably going to crap out on me in a second. So I'm going to pause you
Yeah.
right there, and I think I got to try to jump out, restart, and come back in point, which will be
Yeah.
easy
No
for me to
worries.
find this part to cut it out. All right. So in case it's a sloppy edit, for those, I just had some technical difficulties, which tends to happen sometimes when you're dealing with intuitives and computer work. But Sean was telling us, you were telling us about your journey. You were on the table, acupuncture, had some
Mhm.
needles in you. You stood up and go from there.
Yeah, I would make it I would use the example of if you've ever been sitting at the bar and you had a couple drinks and you don't feel anything, but then you stand up and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
it hit me. Now it wasn't like
Right.
an alcohol feeling, but that's the type of difference I felt. It was like, so and at the same time or around the same time, that's when I went to go see a local hypnotherapist. And again,
Hmm.
I was a little bit nervous. I'd never tried hypnosis before. But, we just talked for maybe half an hour about all the stuff that was going on in my life. And then she did a short 15-minute induction where she had you visualize you're putting down your emotional baggage like it's physical baggage and
Yeah.
has you, focus on every muscle group one at a time and kind of relax them. But I left there feeling, again, amazing. And I was like, cool, what was that?
Hmm.
So all these things were going on in my life that were kind of opening me up to new things, the power of the mind, something about this energy, that acupuncture was working with. And so I had these experiences, and it was shortly after that that I was able to get a new job. We moved to Ohio, and life got better. So I had this in the back of my mind about hypnosis, and had this weird energy thing. And it was my daughter who was about 1 year old when we moved here. We bought a house that had been vacant for 13 years. um, we did some renovations to update it. I like to say 1985 called they wanted their kitchen back. So we uh, we were doing these renovations and we moved in, and this is the most bizarre thing. I'd never been faced with this before, but I started to notice that, my daughter's behavior was kind of different when we were in the house. She was really clingy, wanted to be around us all the time. I
Yeah.
just thought it was a new environment. And um, it was getting worse. Like when we would leave her in her bedroom at night, like if we had to go get something and then come back in, she would just scream, like, don't leave me alone. And
Wow.
I had to do this one night, put her in her crib. I went to go get some. I was coming right back because we would stay with her until she fell asleep.
Hmm.
And it occurred to me like she's looking in the corner of the room like she sees somebody. And it dawned on me, I'm like, is she aware of something I'm not?
Yeah.
What do you do? Like,
Yeah. It's a
I'd never
scary
been
thing.
faced with that. Yeah. So I started to dive into, okay, like, what do you do if you think your kid sees stuff in your house? Um,
Yeah.
this is my baby girl, the parental guardian
Yeah. Kicks
in
in
me is
strong.
like, I need to know what's wrong and I need to help fix it, but I felt powerless. It's like, how can I do anything about something that I can't even see?
Hmm.
So I was doing my research online, and I came across a psychic's website. I wish I had written down who it was, but they were talking about having sensitive kids.
Yeah.
And she said, meditate on the intention of becoming more aware if you want to be more aware.
Hmm.
And I was a little worried I was going to start seeing dead people, but at the same time, um, again, that guardian parental instinct is stronger than
Yeah.
anything.
Yes.
You want to protect your kids. So I pushed through all that fear and I started meditating. I'd never meditated before, but when I started, I was like, this is like that hypnosis I did.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was just focusing on, hey, I want more awareness. I want to be able to protect my daughter. And it was very, very shortly after I started doing that on a daily basis that I started having these intuitive insights.
Yeah.
I was walking down the hallway at work, and for no reason, I start thinking of falling money. And as soon
Hmm.
as I get around the corner, I'd see a guy standing in front of the vending machine and he drops his dollar. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that was weird. I would be in a meeting and I just started doodling in my notebook, which I don't often doodle. I'm not a doodler, but I started drawing a tire, like a truck tire. And then my boss at the end of the table, about 15 minutes later, says, I need to leave the meeting early. I got to go get new tires put on my truck. Um,
Yeah.
and the most powerful one I had that caused me to say, okay, I need to figure out what's going on was, so this was August of 2011. They had that big earthquake in DC. I think it was a 5 point something on Richter scale, and it cracked the Washington Monument. And
Oh, I
so the
remember
day
that.
that happened,
Yeah.
yeah. So the day that happened, I was walking out of my building that I worked in across the street to a neighbor building where I was going to go to a meeting. And I'm walking through the lobby. It's a beautiful sunny day. There's nobody around. I'm the only one walking through that lobby, and all of a sudden, it's like there's an overlay of everything in my mind, and everything starts shaking. But yet, with my physical senses, I know nothing is shaking. But it was such a
Yeah.
strong sense. I thought, "Oh my God, earthquake!" But I'm like, "What in the heck is going on?"
Yeah.
So I'd never had that happen before. I haven't had it happen since. But I went to my meeting, and an hour later, the meeting's winding down. We're getting ready to end it. And my boss leans over and elbows me, and he's like, "Check this out. DC just had an earthquake." It's like, "What?" And he
Wow.
says, "Yeah." I was like, "When?" He's like, "Just now. It just hit the news." And so I was like, "Okay, I got to figure out." I wasn't getting answers on what's going on at home. I'm starting to have
Right.
psychic flashes that
Like
I'd never had before.
precognition. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I was talking to my wife and she's like, I believe you, but I don't know what to tell you. And so I found a group on back then meetup.com was more of a thing
I
and
I've done a
you
few
could find,
meetups back in the day. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember
yes,
because you were scrambling to just find somebody who you could talk to about this stuff
right.
because it can be
I
such a,
needed answers.
especially at that stage when you're just
Hmm.
opening up to it, it's such a lonely, confusing thing, and like you're wrestling with like, am I crazy? Like I know I'm not crazy because I'm getting validation, but this is crazy, right? Like I'm
Absolutely.
thinking these things, and how can I prove it to get somebody else to believe me? And Meetup was a nice way to connect with people during that
Yeah.
process.
No, you nailed it, man. I was questioning my sanity, but at the same time
Yeah,
using my wife as a sounding board. She's like, no, I believe you. I mean, you're not crazy, but at the same time, I don't know what to tell you. So
you're not crazy, but
yes.
this is crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So I found
Yeah.
this meetup group and I was a little worried I was going to meet a bunch of weirdos. But they were just the most down to earth, awesome
Yeah.
people. Like, yeah, there was people that worked in healthcare, like at the
Hmm.
hospital. There was a guy that worked at the building across the street from me. And I was just like, holy crap, like, but I was just laying it out to him, like all the stuff that was going on. And one guy's like, I'm a certified medium, I will help you out. And I'm like, still a little bit leery, like, okay, what's this guy want some money or something? But
Right.
like, yeah, so, like, but he's like, I just want to help. He's like, I won't charge anything. And I'm like, well, at least let me make you dinner. He's like, that's
Yeah.
cool. So put on a pot of chili, had him over.
Yeah.
And again, my daughter is barely 1 year old at the time. She's not, kids that young don't comprehend what's
Hmm.
going on. We didn't sit her down
Right.
and say, hey, we're going to get rid of the spirits or,
Right. Right.
we didn't even know what was going on. We were going to have him come over and see what's going on. But, but kids, they just respond to the stimuli in their environment. And something shifted that night. He went through, he's like, I think you got two here. One feels like it's a younger male. He thought you could help him. The other one's like an older female. She's really fixated on your daughter. And
Hmm.
and he's like, I think that's the one bothering her. I was like, okay, well, that's great. But can you get rid of him? And
Yeah.
he's like, yeah. So he did his clearing exercise. I think he used like a form of Reiki, but
Hmm.
I honestly couldn't tell that anything was different. But my daughter's behavior shifted that night. I mean, the sense of urgency to be around us, the panic in her eyes, like it was
Yeah.
all gone. So I
Wow.
was like, okay, I want to go back and I want to learn as much as I can from these people because
Hmm.
obviously I've got a sensitive kid. And obviously I'm starting to have experiences now. I want to know what's
Yeah.
going on. I don't want to just pretend this all, like, you can't pretend something like that didn't happen.
Right.
So I really latched on to remote viewing when I learned about remote viewing. I mean, this meetup met every 2 weeks, and they talked about dowsing,
Hmm.
shamanism. Different psychics would come in and talk about crystals and
Yeah.
palm reading and psychometry. But when I learned about remote viewing as an engineer, the
Hmm.
process, the methodical
Yeah. Hmm.
scientific way that it's laid out. It's like, that is my language. That is my thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was all over that. But I still wanted to learn as much as I could about the other stuff and tried to have experiences where it was safe. Um, I tried past life hypnosis and stuff like
Hmm.
that, but I wasn't about to go trying shrooms or anything like that because again, I don't like taking any
Yeah.
substances. But
Right. Right.
yeah, so I mean, that's sort of the short version about how I got into remote
It's
viewing. It was all kind of kickstarted by a bunch of crazy events in my life.
it really makes you wonder, what's the bigger picture here? Because you look at all these chess pieces as how they align. Like you didn't want your wife to have to leave her career again. So you're like, I'm gonna make this right choice here and support her. And now I can't find a job for 2 years. And then the fact that you spiral into that depression, you're like, oh, this is horrible. But if you didn't
Oh
go
yeah.
through that, you never would have had these experiences that led to it. It's like, wow, is there some kind of bigger plan here that you're following? And I'm curious about the acupuncture. What do you think it was? What do you think it unlocked in you? What do you think happened there?
Yeah, in fact, I got a referral from the clinic I was going to when I lived in St. Louis.
Hmm.
The lady that I saw there was awesome, and I was like, oh, I wish I could take you with me. You did so much to help me. And she's like, well, she's like, if you're moving to Dayton, she's like, I know, husband and wife practice. I went to chiropractic school with his wife. He does acupuncture and acupressure. She's
Hmm.
like, they're amazing. So she's like, you should go see them. They're in Dayton. And I did. So I met them back in 2011 when we moved here. And I learned, oh, I'm still friends with him today, even though he's since retired. But
Right.
I've learned a lot from him. And I do believe in this, this life force energy. They call it chi, they call it
Hmm.
prana, whatever you
Yep.
want to call it. I think that's the real us, right?
Hmm.
My 2 cents. And, like, I think he did qigong,
Hmm.
and taught me, some of the exercises and things like that. And it really brought a lot of help to me, through weathering difficult circumstances and overcoming health issues and stuff like that.
That's fascinating. And the way you get opened up to that, and then you just follow it. And I think that's the key is that you had that. And I think that's what a lot of us, it's just we want to know. We want to know more. We want to figure that out. And you're like, oh, I figured this out. Oh, but now I got 500 more questions. Let me start exploring this one and this one and this one. And you grow and you realize next thing you know, it's 20 years later and you're still trying to find answers. There are new answers that you're looking for. But you just never stop that learning process because it's such a fascinating journey that you're on as you're going through it. Have you
Yeah,
had any
I
more?
agree
Oh, I'm
100%.
sorry, good. Have you had
Oh,
any
I was
more
just
of
going to
those?
say I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking back to your paranormal experiences in the home, have you ever had anything else show up there that you're aware of?
Yeah, we've had a couple experiences over. I mean, so my daughter, it's interesting. They say that people, sensitive kids usually have it until, you know, they're around kindergarten is when they start to lose it, and that kind of
Yeah.
matched with our daughter because in the summer of 2012, I lost two great uncles, and
Hmm.
on both occasions, so she was like 2.5 at the time, and she was one of those kids that learned how to talk very clearly, very articulately at a young
Yeah.
age. Sometimes kids talk and the parents need to interpret for them because
Right.
it's tough. I mean, growing up, learn the language is tough, but some kids just pick it up real fast, and she was one of those. But
Yeah. It's like my youngest.
yeah, nice. So we were walking through the office, going to the garage to leave to go somewhere, and I was walking with my daughter, and she just stops dead in her tracks, and she goes, "Daddy, there's a man in the room." And I, knowing that she's sensitive, I'm like, "Okay, the hair's not standing up on the back of my neck. I'm not getting a bad feeling. I don't think they're here. I don't. Whoever it is, it's not negative." So I'm not going to tell her it's in her imagination because I truly believe that
Right.
she's able to see stuff, right? But at the same time, I don't know what to tell her. So I don't want to make her scared. I want her to I want to nurture this gift and
Yeah.
try and help her to develop it. And so
Right.
I said, well, I don't think they're here to hurt us. I think it's okay. And she's like, okay, so we go get in the car and didn't really think that much more about it until I got a phone call later that day saying great uncle Ed passed away. Or
Oh wow.
and so yeah,
Yeah.
And but so he passed away before her experience, but we didn't get the phone call until after. And she did it again later that summer when so my mom would watch her while my wife and I were working,
Hmm.
and she was doing potty training at the time. So they're in the bathroom, and she was talking to my mom and stopped in the middle of a sentence, and she's looking in the bathtub, and she says, "Grandma, there's a man in the bathtub." And again, Uncle Les had passed away, but before that, but we didn't get the
Right.
phone call until after. And
Wow.
so it was around when she was in kindergarten. Um, I was my wife, whenever she would drive our truck, she didn't like pulling it in the garage because she hit the wheelbarrow one time because it's a big truck, right?
Hmm.
So anytime she would drive the truck, she would pull it out, leave it in the driveway, and then come in, and I would pull it in the garage. So she had gone to the hardware store with the kids. She was picked up some stuff. So she comes in with, a couple bags. She goes, "Can you pull the truck in the garage, get the girls out?" I was like, "Okay." So I went out, they were giggling, laughing, having a good time. And I said, "What's so funny, you two?" And I'm pulling in the garage, and they said, "There's a ghost by the door." And I was like, they never really play like that, but at the same time, the
Right.
way that they were joking, it didn't cause me to say, "Oh, would you say?"
Right.
Wasn't really, it didn't register as an event. And um, get them in the house. Maybe 15 minutes later, my mom calls and she says, "Your Aunt Lynn passed away." And which she was dealing with cancer. We knew that it was coming
Right.
soon, but you never really quite prepared. So
Right.
I was like, "Oh,
Right.
crap." Then I went to my daughter. I was like, "Fiona, what did you see?" And she said, "It was just my imagination, Daddy, but it was a girl ghost."
Mm.
So at that point, something was shifting in her brain
Yeah.
I think that most of us filter that stuff out.
Yeah.
And she was learning to filter it out, but it was still registering somehow, maybe through the subconscious.
Yep.
And so she was dismissing it, but she still had it. Um, since then, she doesn't really remember those experiences, and she doesn't see stuff anymore. But
How old is she now?
13,
13. Okay.
time is
It,
flying.
it,
Yeah,
it might come back. I mean, and I'm sure if she put some work in when she's a little bit older, I'm sure she could tap back into it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't doubt it. I think she's going to be intuitive, but
Yeah.
yeah, but she was just a catalyst for helping awaken me in this. And yeah, over the years, we've had a couple. So my medium friend taught me how to clear stuff out when it's
Hmm.
around, and it's
Yeah.
and I could, the exercise is you close your eyes and you visualize the tunnel of light
Hmm.
back home is opening up. That's how you call it in. And you just ask for help from, whether you believe in spirit guides or guardian angels,
Right.
whatever it is, you can call in Jesus, Buddha, whoever, and you just
Yeah.
ask, "Hey, can you help bring whoever this is back home?" And I know it feels like an exercise. You're just playing with your imagination, but it really does seem to. I mean, it seems to work. I remember my daughter when she was really young and was kind of bothered by this stuff, a lot more sensitive. Um, we she had something in her room, and so I sat down with her and I was like, "All right, let's." And I was trying to teach her how to do this exercise too, so she
Hmm.
could be empowered to kind of take control and help herself. And so I said, "All right, well, let's close our eyes." And no, I take that back. This was when she was young. Yeah, because that's why this was so kind of chilling, is because I wasn't telling her. That's right. Sorry, I'm just remembering. So I said, "All right, I'm gonna clear, I'm gonna try and get rid of this thing." And so I was doing this exercise, and first I'm kind of getting myself centered. I'm realized so
Hmm.
this is like a minute of silence, right? And I just told her,
Right.
and she was sitting there quiet. And just as I visualized the tunnel opening up and saw like a hand reaching down and pulling something dark and misty out of the room, she had the shivers. Like she got the shivers,
Hmm.
like at that
Yeah.
instant.
Yeah.
But I wasn't telling her what I was doing. And so that was like one of those experiences like, wow, this really is crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
That validation piece.
yeah. And it always seemed to help. So, and,
Fascinating.
and
I do something similar through my Reiki practice. A lot of times I'll just scan myself, or if I'm working with somebody else too, and you connect with something. You find a shadow or something that usually is something, an attachment. But it's a very similar process. And a lot of times I'll ask it like, why are you here? What do you want?
Mhm.
It's because there's to see what information I can gain from it. But then it's the same thing. You just release it out into the universe or out into the light.
Mhm.
And I've had people report, they'll just go, "Whoa," because I'm not always communicating that out loud at times. Sometimes I am. They'll say, "Whoa, I just felt something. I feel lighter right now," and I've done it on myself. And you feel like a rush, and things go as
It
things
never
leave.
gets
So that's
old,
a
does it?
no. That's what I was talking to Dick about, just with remote viewing. Like every little hit, I don't care
Yeah.
how small it is. Everything is. It's still so fascinating. And I think in part that's because of at least how we're conditioned growing up. Like, this isn't real. This doesn't exist. This isn't possible. Like, your worldview, no matter how open-minded you are, no matter how open-minded we are now through our experiences, it is still absolutely one of the most incredible things in the world to me. Every time I could see it every single day, and I'm still like, oh my gosh, it's mind-blowing to see this stuff happen.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
in fact,
What? Go ahead,
I'm
Sean.
sorry. I was going to say during the lockdown in 2020, I taught my girls remote viewing,
Oh,
and
wow.
um, think they were 7 and 10 at the time. And because, as we, growing up, they had been subjected to, having this nurtured whenever they had an experience. We didn't
Yeah.
dismiss it out of hand. We would explore it. Um, we would do family meetings where I would guide meditations and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and they would have experiences. And so when I taught them remote viewing, there was no, there's very little to no doubt in their mind that this was not possible. Like most
Right.
of us as adults, we have to do a lot of deprogramming or unlearning
Yes.
things yeah, but they didn't have that barrier
Hmm.
because it's like, hey, this is
It's
kind of
just the way
normal,
it is. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I just found that interesting that I remember and so then when they were starting to go to school, I was like, uh, you don't, I was like, don't talk about this with your teachers or friends. And they're like, well, why? And I was like, well, it's not exactly the most accepted or normal thing. And they're like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? So we have an Echo Dot, and I was like, hey, tell me about remote viewing, and then it started saying it's pseudoscience, and they're like, why would people think it's pseudoscience? They could just try it, then they would know it's real. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that easy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's neat having those conversations. I'm the same way with my kids. I'm very open with intuitive things, and when they have those experiences, and had to have that talk at one point, like, just be careful who you're saying these things to, because not everybody always understands or is open to it.
Exactly.
Fortunately, we're in a school that's a pretty open-minded community, so they don't have to worry about that. But
That's
I
good.
want to circle back to something that you said, which I think is really a neat observation. When you encountered when your daughter said she saw your uncle, the first great uncle that passed, you said, "I didn't feel anything standing up in the back of my neck, and I knew it wasn't anything malevolent."
Mhm.
That's a tough lesson to learn. At least for me, it was. I remember, because I used to be, sensitive to different energies in the room, and
Mhm.
all through like my teenage years, and this could have been like my Catholic upbringing. As soon as I would sense something, I'm immediately like cursing it out of the room. Like, it's the devil, it's bad, like the instant I would feel it. And it wasn't until I was a little bit older that I wanted to explore it, and I realized, well, this doesn't feel bad. This
Yeah.
feels good, but it took me a while to get to that point, to try to get a different feel for the different types of energies that were in there. How did you come to that process and understanding, like, start to feel things out, good or bad?
Yeah, it was a lot of help from the acupuncture guy
Hmm.
that kind of helped mentor me. He helped kind of coach me through some of the stuff, and also with that meetup group I was telling you about, it got validated to me through experiences. I remember we were on a vacation out west where we flew into Las Vegas, and we were taking a 2 week road trip. So we rented an
Hmm.
SUV, and we drove up through Nevada, went through Idaho, Washington, Oregon, down into California and Lake Tahoe, and then back to Nevada. So we
Hmm.
did this like really crazy road trip. But we were in northern Nevada at a gas station, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And my wife and girls were inside the gas station using the bathroom. And I had come out, and I was kind of stretching my legs, just standing in front of the car. And a car pulls up, and there's these two guys in it, and they have a kid in the back seat. And they were asking me, I can't remember what they asked me, but they wanted me to come up to the car, and they were saying like, hey, we need some money for gas, and we'll give you like a gold watch or something. I'm like, this is
Mm,
not right. And they're like, and I was like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have any cash. And they're like, hey, we can't hear you. Can you come closer? And then they rolled down the window so I could see the kid, like, to establish trust. Like, they were trying to
Yeah.
lure me closer. I have
Yep.
no idea what they were up to, but it did, like, the hair on the back of my neck was
Hmm.
standing up. Like, I just got the worst. In fact, I don't think I
Yeah.
could have moved my legs if I wanted to. Like, I was just like glued, like, nope, I'm not
Yeah.
going. Like, something's right, or something's not
Yeah.
right here.
Right.
Um, and so I stayed, I didn't go, and they finally just kind of gave up and drove away. But that night I had a dream that I was in I do a lot of dream analysis work where
Yeah.
I analyze my dreams, and I think my dreams give me feedback on things too.
Hmm.
But I had a dream that I was in like the old West, and I was in a like a saloon, but outside there was a bunch of cowboys, and they wanted us to go outside so they could rob us.
Yeah.
And I just, I avoided it by not going outside. And I was like, I think my dream was telling me, like, I avoided getting robbed. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely. And
I
then
don't know,
that
but
that reminds me too. I mean, maybe it's one of those scenarios. I'm thinking movies like Cloud Atlas, if you've ever seen it,
yeah,
where like you're reliving past life experiences in each life, and similar scenarios are playing out, and you're learning these lessons and seeing the same souls in different bodies going through. Maybe that dream was a memory of something from prior.
could have been. It could have been.
Yeah.
I'm very open-minded to that stuff, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, but I think that's great. With the dream analysis, I keep a journal, and I recorded all my intuitive experiences over the years. And man, let me tell you, it's been so insightful. Like 10 years later, 15 years later, to go back and look at some of those things as you're exploring something down the line, and then to
Uh-huh.
look at the threads and the growth that you have there as you're going. I mean, it's just such a valuable tool to just write it down as you're
Yeah.
going through it.
Yeah, I need to be better about recording my dreams. I used to write them in a journal next to it's
Yeah.
still sitting on my nightstand, but I got
Yeah.
lazy and I
It's
got out of the
work.
habit of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, I don't write down all my dreams anymore, but when I have a significant one, I do. But I remember doing, like, when I at one point I had it, I would wake up after each individual dream. I'd wake up real quick, write it down, and then have no memory of it. And the next morning, wake up like, oh, I don't remember writing this down or this dream. But then you just get too tired and too lazy, or you have kids, and you're like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm waking up all the time with kids. But it's a great tool to have. Absolutely.
Do you find that when you record just scribble a couple notes about the dream, that when you read those, it kind of it brings you back and you're able to
Yeah.
recall a lot more details? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've got dreams from 20 years ago, and I just have to read a couple sentences, and then it sucks me right back into that experience. But if you
Yeah.
don't catch it in time, you lose the whole thing.
Oh yeah, it's gone. In
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
there's a neat trick that I learned that I don't know if you want to try this sometime, but if you wake up and you know you had a dream and you're like, oh, I
Hmm.
lost it, and you know that you want to remember because there's like something significant about it. What I do is before I step in the shower, I'll set an intention. Like when
Hmm.
I'm zoning out in the shower, I was like, I want to remember my dream.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, it works. I'll just
Oh,
be
wow.
zoned out, because actually, when I got my hypnosis certification, I learned that we go into a natural state of hypnosis several times a day, and it's when
Uh-huh.
we're doing our routine mundane tasks, like
Yep.
because when you take a shower, you're on autopilot. When
Yeah.
you drive a car on autopilot, reading a book, watching TV,
Hmm.
taking the dog for a walk, you get into this alpha brainwave state, which is really the first stage of hypnosis. And
It's like your
so,
programmable state, right?
yeah, very much so.
Hmm.
And when you're in alpha and theta, those are the main stages of hypnosis where you're working with stuff.
Right.
So when you're in alpha, you're really, really close to the theta state, and it's a lot easier to recall the dreams that you had. So
Hmm.
setting an intention helps. You can set intentions to re-enter a dream after you've woken up,
Yeah.
and go back into that dream, or you can even state an intention like, I want to dream about this tonight, and you can get symbology that maybe answers that question. It's kind of interesting.
Wow. That's really cool. Um, so you're certified in hypnosis now?
Yeah, I think it was like 2014. I saw an online class through the American Alliance of Hypnotists,
Right.
and it was like become a certified hypnotist. I was like, oh, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So took an 8-week course, and I don't have a practice, or I did it for me. I wanted to learn
Right.
more
Right.
about how it works. And yeah, so
Do you do
it's
anything
pretty
with
cool.
that now, or like do you ever use it?
Yeah, I mean, I've done it for friends and family,
Hmm.
just for fun, but I did, like I said, I don't have a practice. Like I said, I have a day
Right.
job and then I do the remote viewing stuff. I would never have time for this.
Right. Right.
But for friends and family, it's cool to explore. In fact, way back in the early days of um, learning remote viewing is around the time that I got my hypnosis certification, and I was getting CRV training from Teresa Frisch, who uses like Lynn Buchanan's methodology.
Right.
Me and a friend that were learning it together, we decided she had struggled with getting into that alpha state and
Hmm.
having to write things down on the paper. She felt like it was getting her out of the state where she was getting good
Right.
data. So I said we could try doing an experiment where I do like like a hypnosis session, and you
Hmm.
just lay in the chair and we can record it, and that could be how you get the data. And she's like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, let's try that." So I called it Hypno RV, but I didn't
Yeah.
realize at the time it's basically ERV, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know about ERV back then.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was.
What kind of sessions, like when you're using hypnosis, and again, just and you're using it on friends and family, what kind of things can you do with it, or have you done with it?
So hypnosis is good for like changing habits because
Hmm.
it's again because like it's a natural state of mind.
Right.
If you know, for those of you who have never done hypnosis, in fact, sometimes people will go to somebody and it doesn't really work, and then they leave thinking, "Oh, I can't be hypnotized." Well, it's not true. Um, Generally, so hypnosis puts you into a vulnerable state, and you know
Hmm.
this. So if you don't trust the person you're with that's facilitating it, you won't allow yourself get into the required brainwave state, and you'll
Right.
just not not get anything out of it.
Right. Right. Right.
And you can walk away thinking, well, that didn't work for me, so I can't be hypnotized. Well, everybody can and does get hypnotized. It's just some people are more hypnotizable. We call that somnambulistic, but
Hmm.
everybody gets into the required brainwave state. Everybody can have an internal experience. That's really all it takes. And so, um, so when you're in that state, so the brain can't tell the difference between imagined reality and experienced
Hmm.
reality.
Hmm.
Um, they've done these cool experiments with athletes where they'll have them. So one group will physically rehearse an event, another
Yep.
group will mentally rehearse an event, and the third group won't rehearse at all. And then they test them all. And the group that physically rehearses and the group that mentally rehearses,
Mentally
they both do
rehearses.
really well.
Yeah.
You train that muscle memory either way. If you're involved in it enough in your mind, you're building neural pathways just as much as
Yep.
you would if you're actually doing it.
You're problem
And so,
solving, and yeah.
yeah, exactly. And
I
so,
did that just to segue, or to support that. I did that a lot when I was a cop. I did a ton of mental role playing on different scenarios, and I
that's
found
cool.
it really helped with my tactical mindset, my situational awareness. Because no matter where I went, I was always, what if, what if, what if, what if, and it really, you're. I mean, there's a lot of issues that came from that later when I when I left the police force, but in terms of being better at my job, yes, that
Oh, for
that was
sure.
just constant training, and it was mostly in my mind of how I would handle things. It was a great way to train all the
Yeah,
time.
no, you were onto something. That's really awesome. Yeah, because
Yeah.
really habits are neural pathways that are so well ingrained, it's like an
Yep.
automatic go-to. There's
Yeah.
so for example, if somebody experiences road rage, right?
Hmm.
Um, they might do it and then they regret it. And they're like, why do I always drive like an idiot and get so mad? But then the next time it happens, they get sucked in because there's this like it's kind of like a dirt road with these really deep ruts
Yeah.
and your
They're
tires
stuck
are
in it.
stuck in it. And that's the only path
Right.
you know how to go through, right? So when you're what you do is you go into hypnosis, you're very, very much immersed in your mind. It's almost like you're in your own virtual reality that you're creating.
Yeah.
And you can make a scenario where you take a different route
Yeah.
and you let it go. Like, hey, that guy that cut me off, it's not personal. I don't know their story. They could be having an emergency. I don't know. I'm letting it go. And you just stay calm. And you rehearse that enough times, your neural pathways build up, and suddenly you now have two different sets of neural pathways. So the next time you encounter that situation in real life, you still have free will, you still have a choice to make,
Right.
it's much easier to take the new route
Right.
and make that new habit your new pattern, because you have two ruts.
You've been through it
So
before, right?
yeah,
And you kind of know what to do, and you feel if you visualize it appropriately. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
But
That.
the really fun things to do with hypnosis are the personal exploration, where you kind of dive into past lives, or uh,
Oh wow.
one of the books that I read, that really got me interested in hypnosis, like learning it more, was Dr. Michael Newton's Journey of Souls.
Uh-huh.
He was a traditional hypnotherapist that had kind of stumbled upon past lives, and later he inadvertently discovered that he could regress somebody into the state where supposedly you're conscious and aware in between lives. And so he did a bunch of research regressing thousands of people, without having published anything. So nobody's out there reading anything to say, okay, I know what to expect, and they're creating the same
Right.
experience. They were all kind of blind cases where they would go in not knowing what it was. They'd go there and they'd all say the same types of things. So I thought that was really interesting, and I was like, I want to know more about that.
Mm-hmm.
So he called it life between lives hypnosis therapy. Um, I just find that all fascinating, and I've explored a little bit of that with some friends and family, but again, it's not like a thing that I do for a job or
What
anything like
is
that.
what is that process like? So you've walked people through like past life regressions.
Just, yeah, a couple.
What is that process, and how does that work, or like in your opinion?
So you start out to facilitate a hypnosis session. You do they call it the induction, where you're
Hmm.
getting that person into the required brainwave state. So you have them close their eyes. You focus on the muscles on the top of your head, relax
Hmm.
them. Focus on the muscles in your face, your back, your neck. You go each muscle group one at a time down your body, and consciously focus on relaxing them. Then you have them like descend a staircase, maybe take a walk on a beach. What you're doing is you're getting them immersed in their mind and kind
Right.
of dissociated with their physical body. So you're almost like
Hmm.
numb to your body, and you're very much
Yeah.
in your etheric or astral or whatever you want to call your
Yeah.
mental body. Um, and then what you do is you say you kind of have them remember events in their lifetime and go younger and younger. So you might say, go back to a time when you were a teenager.
Right.
We're focusing on happy memories, right? And the next thing you know, that person's like at their 16th birthday, and their best friends are all there, and they're like, oh, wow. And then you go back to when you're 7 or 8, and then you go
Hmm.
back to when you're in the womb. Um, and then you go back to before, like in the void before you were born. And so what you're doing is you're getting them kind of immersed in what it's like to remember past memories, and
Wow.
they're experiencing that in something familiar. And then you have them kind of go through a tunnel, and the first thing you do, and this is the method that I was taught, is you plant your feet on the ground, and there's something
Hmm.
like it's grounding, and you look at your feet and you describe what's the ground, or what are your shoes wearing, start describing your clothes. Then you ask them
Yeah.
what's your name, and you start referring to them as that name. So if you say, hey, my name is Carl, okay, tell me, what do you do, Carl? And you just
Right.
engage them in that way, and then the things just seem to come to them. And the next thing you know, they're telling you about situations, scenarios,
Hmm.
traumas, and you work to kind of uncover like what is relevant about that past life. And here's where I'll put the caveat. You know, who knows if past lives are real or not? I
Hmm.
believe that, yeah, that's probably what we have, but I don't know for sure. Um,
Right.
Even if it's just the subconscious mind weaving a very intricate story that is helping you to resolve some sort of a trauma that you have that needs resolving. And that story is wrapped around, hey,
Hmm.
this is an elaborate way of telling a story that gets you to resolve this issue that you have. Um, Maybe it is just a story. I don't know. And in either case, healing takes place, and people seem to get a better understanding about themselves. So I
Yeah.
think it's helpful and beneficial, whether it's a real past life or not.
Wow.
It's
So like if I'm
interesting.
afraid of the ocean, right? Like right now, if I'm afraid of the ocean, I could do this is extreme,
Yeah.
stereotypical example, but I could do a
Yep.
past life a regression, and it's like, oh, you were a pirate and you sank on the ship and you drowned a horrible death. and that's why you're afraid of the ocean today. And then
Yeah.
so going through that experience, it kind of clicks, and you're like, oh, I don't need to be scared of the ocean now. Like I understand, and
Yeah.
it kind of releases that. Wow.
Yep. Yeah. And as the hypnotherapist or the facilitator of the experience, one of the things that you need to be careful about is not leading the person to
Yeah,
something like
suggestion,
where,
right?
yeah, like anything that you say can prompt them. So what you have to do is ask very open-ended questions. Like instead of
Hmm.
saying, is it hot or is it cold? Like you just say,
Right,
what's the temperature like?
right.
By saying the word hot or cold, it triggers
You're just
that,
putting it.
like, yeah,
It's very similar when you're interviewing children.
yeah,
Going back to my law enforcement hat, and actually, technically, the hat that I wear now, I'm a dean of students at a K-8 school. So when I'm talking, especially to the younger kids, I don't say like, "Did you hit him?" I say, "Tell me what happened," or
yeah,
and you don't want to give them those leading questions because they want to please you, and they'll tell you, whatever you just said, they'll just say it back to you. So that
yeah,
makes sense because and I heard that with like abduction regressions, people that are saying they're abducted by ETs or beings or whatever, that you got to be really careful not to craft the story in their minds and just ask those open-ended questions and let them kind of go with it. Have you ever
yeah,
done
definitely.
anything like that with somebody with an ET experience?
Let me think. I don't. I don't think I've had anybody that's had like an ET experience in a hypnosis session. I've talked to people that have had them, but I've never
Yeah.
had it come up in a hypnosis session.
Hmm.
It would be
Wow.
cool if it did. That
Yeah.
it's all fascinating to me, but
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, is this something you think, like, do you do this through Zoom? Is this something you have to be in person for, or?
I I've done them all in person
Mm,
because I think it can be done through Zoom, but what I wouldn't want to have happen is like just in our interview here earlier, we had the tech issue where you had to,
right,
you know, freeze up, and I would not want somebody to be in this like zoned out state where there's a tech issue and then suddenly like I'm not able to do anything about helping them, right? So,
right.
um,
Gotcha.
yeah. And
That
again,
could be
it's a hobby for me, so it's not something that
yeah.
I've had to worry about figuring out how to do that remotely if necessary.
So, and I want to probably wrap up this discussion shortly, and then we can move into our second conversation. And maybe talk a little bit about remote viewing. But so given these experiences, with the ghosts and the mediums and the hypnosis and the past life regressions, how would you describe, our reality as you see it? I mean, how does it all, what's the big picture here? I know
Oh
that's a
man.
big open-ended question, but I'm just curious. So take it wherever that leads you to. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a couple takeaways that I've had from my life experiences that I truly have been ingrained in me as a belief, a solid belief.
Hmm.
One, everything and everyone is connected somehow. Like the
Yeah.
distance and the separation just seems to be an illusion.
Hmm.
You know, the that connectedness is real. There's something about it. So I think that there is the reality as we think of it as like everything being separate. I feel like it's all connected somehow. And there's something more to that.
Hmm.
Two, I believe that we go on from this life. Like I
Right.
think there's more to it than just you're born, you live, and you die type thing.
Right.
And I guess like one thing that I've wondered is when we have a dream and we are creating this whole world and we're interacting with all these different people, like sometimes you can say something to somebody in a dream and they'll get mad or shocked or surprised or whatever, and it's like
Right.
it's a different individual, but is that not just a part of you?
Yeah.
So sometimes I wonder, are we all just dream characters in a dream that God is having, right?
Yeah.
um I don't know.
Many layers. I mean, it's like Inception, those projections, those subconscious
Yeah,
projections, and how many layers down are you? And I mean, you could go forever with this. I mean, it's the simulation argument basically. And then how many of those projections are having projections of their own as it spread? I mean, I love exploring those thoughts and those possibilities. I think it's fascinating to think about.
me too.
But yeah, yeah, really, really cool stuff. You've had some really awesome experiences. I started off this discussion wanting to get into like your remote viewing journey and how you came about joining the team and everything. I think that'll have to be part two of our conversation because I'm sure that's a fascinating story. And I want to talk a little bit remote viewing with you too.
For
But
sure.
what a neat journey. And I think a lot of you listening out there can relate. It's that spiritual journey that's so personal to us, but yet so many of us share that in common as we get these little things that kind of wake our minds up to it, and we say, "Oh, let me learn more about that." And you just go and you learn and you keep adding to that experience. It's been fascinating. Any final thoughts on this segment, Sean? Anything else you want to share?
No, just I really, yeah, it's kind of cool just kind of going back through these memories because it's been a little while since I revisited some of these, and yeah, I I really go back to what you said earlier about how um yeah, how crazy is it? Is there a bigger plan at play, like that all these weird scenarios and
Yeah,
situations came about, especially with the health issue that I had. I wouldn't wish
yeah,
the experience I went through for those 2 years. It was 2 years, 1 month, and 3 days, but who's counting? Um, being unemployed, right? And
yeah,
the health issue I had in there. I
yeah,
wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
yeah.
But at the same time, I'm grateful that it happened to me because the things that it opened me up to, um, I never would have opened up to if I didn't have that experience. So
Right.
it's one of those things that's just weird.
And I'm sure a lot of people listening and watching this, will have a very similar experience. I think it's those hard experiences that really open us up because it makes us raw and vulnerable. And we start thinking about our own mortality and the bigger picture and everything when we start going through things like that. But it also, I used to really struggle with like, are we living in some prison planet? Is there some good and evil at play here? But when you hear an experience like that, you went through something bad, and in those moments, I know I've been through where it's like, man, the world sucks, and I'm just being tortured, and everything's evil, and it's like I'm in just this state of despair. And then you realize the lesson you learned like 3 years later, and you're like, wow, like I had to go through that. It sucked, but I had to go through that to get to where I am now. And you start to see that bigger picture. And that always gives me a sense of hope and a sense of peace about things like, yeah, well, you can't appreciate the good stuff without the bad stuff. And that's a growth point. As much as it sucks, I don't want to grow anymore. Sometimes I say, right. But I think there's so much value in that.
Really well said, Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Sean. Well, it's been a great introductory conversation. I'm glad you and I got to connect, and I have you for another hour. So we're going to get in and talk a little bit of remote viewing. For those of you watching, it'll be the next episode that we release here for you as we do a deep dive with Sean and some remote viewing and talk a little bit more about future forecasting. For those of you new to this platform, check us out at thefutureforecastinggroup.com, where you can see all the fascinating remote viewing projects that go from cryptocurrencies to world events to political events to the mysterious to the woo woo, which is a whole lot of fun for us to explore. So Sean is now at the helm, taking over. He has the captain's chair where I once sat, and I'm happy to see you in that seat, Sean. I'm excited to see what you're going to bring to the team. Your analysis is excellent. I think it really adds something to it, and the team is lucky to have you. So thank you for carrying that torch, my friend. I'm really looking forward to what you're going to do with it.
Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, I feel lucky to be here.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this one. So thank you, Sean, and thank you for the rest of the Future Forecasting Group, and to all of you watching. I'm Dennis Nappi II. Thanks for watching.